You're listening to the Diginauts on the Good Talk Podcast Network.
Coming up on this week's The Diginauts.
Are you okay with the government requesting your pre-approved use of your fingerprints to unlock your phone?
Do you want scientists messing with your DNA on the very basis level to manipulate your traits?
Would you exclude people based on their political preference?
All that and more coming right up on The Diginauts.
Technology.
Theoretical.
Technology.
Society.
Technology.
Technology.
You don't have to use your finger.
Oh, his snot turned green. What should we do?
Diginauts.
Hello, my name is Deron.
I'm Eric.
And we are the Diginauts. Are we the Diginauts? Is the show the Diginauts?
Both.
I just said it, and it sounded... I don't know. Anyway, welcome. You found us. This is episode 5. We are going to dive into top of mind today. Eric, tell us all about it.
Yep. So Sam Altman, the young president of Y-Combinator, the kind of famous investing company and incubator in the Bay Area, he released a blog all about the 2016 election. And while he basically showed his support for Hillary and condemned Trump, he kind of kept ties with Peter Thiel, who is in a more advisory role, but is basically a surrogate for Trump. And he basically said, we're keeping Thiel aboard because that Altman believes in free speech.
Okay. So there's an article on the front of Gizmodo. Sam Altman should resign from Y-Combinator. Why?
Why? Because by associating yourself with someone who's backing Trump, not only financially, but also as a surrogate, to me, that's basically validating and aligning yourself with someone with some controversial views, ranging from banning people due to a religion to putting up a wall and things like that. And that, to me, is not American. That is something I would never want a company that I am part of to be associated with.
Right. So, I mean, this is an interesting... We haven't really discussed politics at all on the show.
Right.
We weren't really planning to ever discuss politics on the show. Unfortunately, we're 3 weeks from an election. You can't throw a stone without politics spilling out like blood from wherever your stone lands.
Right.
I guess... So I'm ever the idealist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trump, of course, shits on on how I want the world to be by how he has chosen to do. But frankly, so does the Clinton campaign, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of I want everybody to be on the up and up, have a straightforward discussion without machinations behind the scenes. I want, I believe this should happen. I believe that should happen. Well, I respectfully disagree, sir. And then an educated electorate considers back and forth, has some polite discussion about it, and we carry on. Not drawn out for a year and a half, not on 24-hour cable, et cetera, et cetera. So I frame, my devil's advocate from that point of view, that I want to live in an idealistic society in which everybody's just nice. Like taught us in kindergarten.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone would like that, but that's just not
right
reality.
So my point is, I get where the Trump rhetoric escalates the conversation to the point where you start having to toss around words like, evil. But I also feel like if I were an investor in Y-Combinator, I would want the leadership of that company to do whatever is in the best interest of the company. And you could argue the degree to which, a politician being in power impacts the future of a company.
Well, I think my guess and my interpretation of his decision was that Peter Thiel is very influential, has a lot of money,
right,
and has probably opened many doors not only for Y-Combinator but also their respective startups they fund. So to me, there's a trade-off. But at some point, I think ethics should take over.
I look at it this way. There are a bunch of other people who, for whatever reason, have decided that the Hillary side, the Democratic side, is just as reprehensible or more so or whatever, and they would make the assertion that this business should have nothing to do with those stinking liberals, right? So, is it not what's good for the goose is good for the gander? I had my first job. I gotta stop going. That's my little tick. I'm going to work on that. That's my promise to everybody who's listening. I'm going to attempt not to do that when I speak in the future. But for now, my first job out of school, I worked in Atlanta, which some of the people I worked with down there described as the exact terminology was an urban island floating in an ocean of rednecks. Oh, God. So, about right. And there was plenty of splash over into the island as far as I was concerned. So it was a different experience for me, having been from Washington State most of my life, which is a pretty entrenched blue state. We went like 75% Bernie this year.
Wow.
Is that more Bernie than Vermont?
Quite possibly.
So anyway, so it was a nice culture shock to me. One of my employers there had a saying that he had borrowed from his father, and his father was very proper Georgia gentleman kind of fellow who had actually been a prominent doctor to the point of seeing presidents when they were in the area. And he had this saying, you don't have to like somebody to do business with them. I don't know whether it's my first job that just kind of had that impact on me or something like that. But I kind of carry that. And again, I know I'm being overly idealistic here. But I don't see waving flags and pitchforks at somebody over their political choice. I think, and this might be me being like the Republicans and imagining a dream state that used to exist, right? Where in churches, people didn't talk about religion. It wasn't considered polite. In schools, people didn't talk about religion. It wasn't considered polite. We kept those things separate. If you wanted to have a political conversation, then, you did in the drawing room with cigars and if I may conjure the image of a bunch of white men sitting around being crusty together. But there's a degree to which can't you be bedfellows with somebody you disagree with completely? I think bedfellows is maybe the wrong word, but
I think you can. It's more about choice. I think anything's possible. Again, it's a matter of choice and morals and ethics.
Right. So you buy Gizmodo's take here.
Yes, Altman should go. He should step down.
So by making
bad choice, time to go.
Okay, so the choice that you see is okay, that's it. You no longer are fit to run a company. Was his support of somebody who gave money to?
Well, I don't know.
Not to a Republican, but to Trump specifically is what it comes down to. Now, if it had been a Mitt Romney donation, you wouldn't have seen that the same way.
It would definitely be different with that. I wouldn't ask him to resign.
That's kind of the line, is that Romney you may disagree with, but he's not going after people on religious basis.
Exactly.
All the litany of things that make this year a shocking year.
Exactly.
Okay. So it's not about political versus business for you. It's about Donald Trump versus everything else.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, I think no matter what you believe in, what you support, that is a part of you no matter what.
Right.
So, people can make choices based on what they know about people.
Right. No, absolutely. Another counter argument would be his point of view here. What Sam Altman said was First Amendment, freedom of speech. One of our teammates doesn't agree maybe with what I think, but he's a teammate and he has the right to think what he thinks. Right. So again, I'm painting the idealistic picture. I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm not necessarily speaking about what I believe in here. But if I needed to be a lawyer and have Altman's back on this, his decision seems like it lines up with how society's supposed to work.
I mean, I think it kind of neuters, then it's like almost any other decision is neutered. Like, oh, that guy is an underperformer, but I can work with him. I won't fire him. You know what I mean? Like, I think it just neuters any backing for any point of view then.
If I say, hey, can't we all get along?
Right.
Then
it's like, oh, you have an underperforming employee. You can stay aboard. We'll just try and work it out after 5 years.
That's a little bit different of a case, though, because the underperforming employee is hurting their company. And as the team leader, it's his job to help everybody to cause the collective to perform better. As opposed to the case of the underperforming employee who is doing so that underperforming employee is keeping the company from doing well, as opposed to this Trump supporter rich dude who is helping the company do well.
Well, a counter argument to that is that I will definitely be doing less business with companies that Y-Combinator is associated with as long as he's aboard.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, and that's the thing, right? That's where we are as a society right now, is we're picking sides, and we, for whatever reason, can't be civil with the other side. I have my opinions on why we've become this, and the role of, let's say, the media in getting us to that place. Everybody just have a nice, polite conversation with everybody else. It can be done. You can do business. You can shake hands. You can disagree. You can try to have an open mind and tell Peter Thiel, hey, not cool. That's what I want to believe. And if nothing else, everybody's gonna die. All the racists are gonna die, and eventually be replaced. This is the way of things. It's just a slower change than some people want to see. I don't know. I don't know what to think about this one. I really don't. My idealism gets in the way of no. Let's be cool, guys. And yeah, Trump. I don't know. I don't even believe he exists. I think that at some point we switched into a reality show. I'm beginning to think maybe the secret coven of rich dudes who meets out in the forest every few years, there's got to be a conspiracy theory out of the 5,000 conspiracy theories that float around the internet. I bet one of them's right, and
quite possibly.
And these sort of cabal of rich people who are manipulating everything. Never mind. We should end this segment before I go off on a.
You're being manipulated.
I probably am, or am I one of the manipulators? The world may never
Wiki
know.
Deron.
This segment, don't tell us what you think. We end most segments by saying, by all means, tweet us and let us know what your opinion is on this one. Read the Gizmodo article. Have a polite conversation later today with somebody who disagrees with you in political or religious point of view. But leave us out of it this time.
Or don't.
We'll introduce a lot more science and technology for you to hit us up about later on in the show.
Are you stuck creatively? Do you not know how to design your own logo? Don't know Photoshop? Don't know Inkscape? Don't know what a font is?
You don't have to. You don't even have to open up Microsoft Paint. Logo Nerds can do it for you. Okay, probably not in Microsoft Paint. But for $27, you can get a package where they do 3 logo designs for you. Revisions is part of it. You cannot beat that price. Don't try to. Go to goodtalknetwork.com/ads. Click on the Logo Nerds banner and solve your design problems.
In this segment, Future File, we'll talk about things that are happening to some extent now, but really impact the future even more so. If you think about it, doctor visits are a pain in the ass. You gotta schedule them.
Sometimes, literally.
Oh, wow.
See what I did there?
Ouch.
Indeed.
Yeah, so, pain all over the place. You got to schedule it. You got to take off work. You got to set the time aside. And you know what? It's not in line with, how people are increasingly interacting with technology today. Like, I can schedule an Uber, it arrives within minutes. Why can't I do the same with the doctor? Well, that's changing. Kaiser Permanente, one of the biggest healthcare providers, not only in California, but I think across the world, is making major efforts to make doctor visits more virtual, more real-time, and kind of in the context and situation that the patient wants versus what, the doctor can schedule.
So I've seen some of this. Are we talking Skyping your doctor instead of?
Yeah, so, technology is really enabling the healthcare providers and patients to meet on their own respective terms. So to your point, it could be via phone, could be via video conference or session chats, among other things.
Okay. Now, immediately people are going to say, yeah, but you go in for a checkup, the doctor, pokes around your stomach and sees close up what's going on with the bump in your knee or whatever. There's a certain degree to which we expect that to be, if not a tactile, at least a in the same room experience. What's their kind of solution to this? Or is it just simply, yeah, some appointments have to stay the way they are, but this way we can get at least more efficient overall?
I mean, to me, it's more about efficiency. It's more about convenience. Mm-hmm. I think so much time is wasted just going back and forth, trying to even get the doctor's appointment made.
Right.
And depending on what healthcare insurance you have, sometimes you have to go through approvals and multiple approvals, see your primary care physician, then get the referral. So to me, this makes it way more efficient, way more immediate. And I think technology from a video and photo perspective is at the point where I could probably, granted if I hurt my knee and I thought I tore my ACL, the doctor can't feel my knee virtually.
Right.
But he or she could likely, I could point my phone at it and they could see where the swelling is or where the bruising is or.
Right. No, and you make a very good point. HMOs are set up so that there is an unnecessary first step every time where you have to go in and have somebody tick a box, right, and say, okay, I have to send you to this specialist, and they have to be a doctor to do that, and there's no reason that couldn't be done remotely. And then that doctor is free to be able to address a lot more.
Yep. And I think, any doctor visit, like they start with questions or they start with, tell me what's wrong.
Right.
All of that can be conveyed via any of those mediums, via phone, via video conference, via text.
Via a web form.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and then God knows that the sort of like, I made a 10:30 appointment and then they see me at 10:45.
Right.
See me for 2 minutes, right? And then send me to another doctor for a follow-up and a test after I've called and spoken to the insurance company for 4 hours.
Right. Or you have a 10:30 appointment, the prior patient's running late.
Right.
You rushed and changed your physical schedule. You rushed to physically be there, and you've just wasted more time. You're frustrated and whatnot. So I'd personally rather be texted like, oh, Dr. Phillips is available for you now. Mm-hmm, great. Mm-hmm. Let's have a Skype or whatever the Apple one is.
FaceTime.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Because we work in digital marketing and digital solutions and all that kind of stuff. So as the guy who designs these kinds of apps and tech stuff, I immediately hear HIPAA. Which, if that doesn't sound familiar to you listening at home, that's the legislation that controls privacy. I don't remember what the HIPPA stands for, but one of them has got to be privacy, like Privacy Act, Health Information.
I think it's Health Information Privacy and Protection Act.
That sounds right. Yeah. So you would have to deal with a certain amount of security. You couldn't just immediately ported. I mean, in other words, Skype and FaceTime, it ain't.
Right.
There would have to be levels of security on it beyond that. But if you're an institution on the scale of Kaiser Permanente, and you can have one doctor see 20 people an hour.
Right. And plus, historically, the doctor model was once patients get into the facility or the doctor's office, that's when they start making money. But with this, that doesn't have to happen. Mm-hmm. And it's not just one-sided. Like, patients benefit from it.
Right.
Doctors benefit from it, and the company benefits from it.
Now, the downside, if you're talking about patients, or what I can see and worry about, would be right now, I can go see my doctor, a pediatrician, for example. We can take the kids in, and then when there's the sort of like, oh, his snot turned green, what should we do? That's sort of an email or a call to the front desk. We don't really get charged for that level of advice. And I can see the immediate, the sort of the health industry, charging by the line for any, back and forth of any kind with a medical professional. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's wrong.
Right.
You are getting service from somebody who is trained, so by all means. But there is a degree of... I guess my point is I would hope that insurance companies aren't the ones who get to decide what does and doesn't get charged for. This is going to be the episode dedicated to my dreamland, by the way.
Darren's dreaming. He's dreamy. I think that's more... I think you have an interesting perception of, the comparison of the virtual services, like I was talking about, and versus the in-person, Mm-hmm. If you bring your son in and you're showing them in person green snot.
Well, but this is my point: is we might not necessarily go in for that. We would do a small kind of check. Hey, is this cool? We just need somebody to reassure us, almost, right?
Right.
But
if someone came to me, like wanting, let's say, certain types of consulting, and they're like, "Oh, I just want a quickie. I just want to pick your brain."
Right.
And if their expectation is no charge,
no, I hear you.
I would say, "Fuck you, pay me."
Absolutely. I guess my point is that yes, it's making it more efficient for everybody, but because I'm the user guy, right? So I have to think about it from the point of view of the end user and the user's experience, and whether the problems that you're solving are an improvement on the experience. And I think it overall probably is. But I know that I get so many nickel and dime family bills all over the place, right? Or there was the article recently about the people being charged to hold their baby after childbirth.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, that's kind of an example of like things that sneak past you. And this theoretically could open that. And, hopefully the companies that are seeing to us our medical needs are going to be on the right page for such things. Right.
And, Kaiser Permanente is not the only one who's really, going into this virtual medical world. Baidu, a significantly sized Chinese company, launched a medical chatbot for Chinese doctors to help diagnose patients. So literally imagine like typing texts and, asking questions, this is, Baidu's medical assistant, and you can say, my baby was born prematurely, and his skin looks yellowish, and so are his eyes. What's happening? And then a whole series of diagnostic questions are returned by the chatbot.
So it's a chatbot, not a doctor.
Right.
Okay. See, now this is interesting, because this is saying, at the end of the day, medical knowledge is... and this is something that my wife and I discuss all the time, right? She kind of is like, why can't they just fix this or just fix that? And I'm more like, an engineer by training. I look at it as like, well, they have a problem. It's an unknown. They don't know what it is. So they have to eliminate possibilities.
Right.
In order to drill down to, figure out and only a theory, right? They're scientists at the end of the day. A theory of what is the issue. So on some level, there's no reason a computer can't handle that, right?
Right.
Like a computer can take all of the knowledge. So now we get into an interesting gray area where it's like, yeah, a computer can handle that, but there's something to be said for human experience of like, well, I do remember this one time where there was a weird exception. Let me check for that exception. And is that better or worse, right? Like, is that human experience or intuition even better than just straight playing the numbers and saying, you know, one time out of every 10,000, it's X. One time out of every 10 million, it's Y. So we're going to assume it's X until, you know, but then you have to go through those tests. And maybe a doctor is like, yeah, but it just doesn't add up. You know, so it gets into an interesting area there.
I mean, I think humans are more flawed than potentially computers. You know, there's been studies where it's like the scans for cancer, and they have these practice scans where they've literally embedded like a bear or a monkey, like really small on the scan, and the doctors never see it. Whereas like a computer can easily identify it. So
wait, they put a monkey?
They purposely put like obvious things that shouldn't be there, right? I'm pretty sure in the past, like it's been like a monkey or a bear or some
just to
some
check
object,
and see if,
right?
If the doctor is scanning it and processing the idea that like, what's that little
Right?
monkey?
Why is a
dot?
bear or a monkey, you know, in the scan? So you know,
And then does the computer go, "Hey, there's a monkey," or it's just sort of like something ain't right?
it can detect like these anomalies.
Okay.
You know, similar to like cancer growth and things like that. So
Nice. Well, I gotta say I'm in favor because I can't ever get myself to the doctor. Like, on my tombstone it will say, "It'll probably go away." It's probably nothing, you know, as my last words. So like the idea of, if for all the reasons we're talking about, it's
Right.
like pain, and then you know you're in being vulnerable with some human you probably haven't met in, you know, in all honesty, in our current system. Whereas if I could, like, it's kind of WebMD, right?
Right.
Given a little bit of personality.
yeah, and people have said repeatedly, especially recently, that your phone knows more about your medical history than your doctor. Because people, you know, they'll go to Google, they'll Google weird rashes, weird symptoms, and whatnot.
Right.
And imagine mining that over time. Like, Google's going to know that you're probably going to, you know, have a heart attack or, like, you know, have an ulcer. Or...
Jeez. And then eventually they'll, like, give you or not give you life insurance based on that information.
Right.
Ah, good stuff. Which just goes to show that never type anything in your phone ever. That's kind of my take. Yeah, no, but now, all that said, I know that for doctors, the sort of the WebMD patient who comes in with an idea already of what they're doing, right? Like, let's take it back to you're a consultant point of view. If somebody showed up to you and already was telling you, here's what my company's doing, you know, good and bad, sign off on this, why don't you? You know, how would you take that?
I mean, that's totally different.
Why is that different?
Why is that different?
Yeah.
Because they're prescribing their own solutions and or problems.
Right. So in one case, it's with a computer system or with a company, and in the case of a doctor, it's with a body. It's just two different systems.
Yeah, it is.
I do agree with you. I'm just you know, devil's advocate is what I do. I think on some level it's maybe ego for doctors a little bit.
Maybe.
I'm gonna get some doctors mad at me. You know, but friends of mine who are doctors will freely admit that, like, yeah, it's not like you're some encyclopedia of everything that's going on. You know, you quietly dismiss yourself into the hallway and then pick up a book and check out what it is and then come back and run to, you know, so there's a degree to which a doctor has to present themselves as all-knowing.
Right.
Just because that's the dynamic, right? We want to be able to say, I'm going to go to this person who will fix it. But they don't necessarily, you know, have it all on the top of their head.
Sure.
Whereas I guess a chatbot will.
Maybe.
If you're a doctor, tell us what you think. If you're not a doctor, You're at least a patient, so tell us what you think. Unlike the last segment about politics, we're very interested in hearing what you have to say about chatbots and about virtual doctor's appointments. Do you think it's an improvement? Do you think that it's something you would use? Or do you think that the times are a-changing a little too fast for you? Let us know.
Do you have more employees than phone numbers and extensions? Is your company growing above and beyond your existing telephony infrastructure? If so, you should bring on Grasshopper. Easily deploy phone system in the cloud, maintain it, upgrade, etc. Go to goodtalknetwork.com/ads and look for Grasshopper. Click on that and you'll be on your way. In this segment, Jurisprudent, we always talk about things that impact legal issues and technology and the intersection of those, and this one's an interesting one and increasingly more relevant. As you know, any iPhone, you need to either enter a code or especially and often your fingerprint. Now, obviously, if you're not willing to, or you're not there physically, and the government or police want the contents of your phone, you're going to have to depress your finger. But historically, people can't be forced into doing that. But
yeah, you say historically, but this is like, how long has the fingerprint thing existed, right? A year or so?
Right, of course. Not that long.
Not that long.
Not long at all.
So
but
this is
now,
the story that we're talking about is kind of an interesting extension off of the San Bernardino government v. Apple.
Right.
It wasn't government v. Apple, but it was.
It was. But then they abandoned it once they found
it out on their own.
the hack around, so to speak. But that was the precedent. This sets another precedent in that a warrant was served in Lancaster, California, and explicitly part of the warrant was to literally enable and give the right to the people serving that warrant to depress people's finger onto said phones and devices to gain access to them, so that they wouldn't wind up with the San Bernardino issue where they had to wait long periods of time to access the phones and whatnot.
Right. So was it? It was part of the warrant, so it was built into the warrant.
Built in, exactly.
And was it for things that they already knew, they already had suspicions about?
No idea. But literally, part of the warrant says authorization to depress the fingerprints and thumbprints of every person who is located at the subject premises during the execution of the search and who is reasonably believed by law enforcement to be the user of a fingerprint sensor-enabled device that is located at the premises and falls within the scope of the warrant.
Yeah. Because the law enforcement officer is going to be like, well, I don't reasonably believe you might be. Let's just not do you. But everybody else. So the interesting thing, I guess, about this is that it's built in ahead of time. It's not, we're going to go search, and if we find phones, we'll then try to get information off of it. It's that we're going to go search, and when we do, we're going to make you open your phone from the very beginning.
Right. And it's basically a somewhat of a demonstration of probable cause that evidence might exist at the location, and they would need access to those devices to maintain access to search them.
Right. See, this is a tricky one. Of course, they're all tricky, but I have a hard time immediately forming an opinion, and I think it's because I don't know enough about the warrants. But here's the thing. I'm guessing nobody knows enough about the warrants. So let me piece through this. For me, I like the Fourth Amendment that protects against unlawful search and seizure. I think that we are getting our Fourth Amendment rights violated more and more every day. I think the TSA, all of it, is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. I think the entire TSA should be found unconstitutional. I genuinely do. And I get the security argument, but to me, like, if the airports were operating as private organizations, if the airlines were pooling their resources and saying, we're going to scan everybody before they get on our planes because it's our property and we want to preserve it, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
That all makes sense to me. That's legit. Sign me up. But as it is, it's a government organization, and the government doesn't have the right to stop you. It's the stop and frisk laws in New York that they don't have the right to do that. And part of the reason is because it gets applied unevenly, right? So we just plain know, it's just plain a fact that they can demonstrate that there's a racial bias in how it gets implemented. And that's why you have a protection of rights. That's why it's in the Bill of Rights from the beginning, so that you aren't able to do those kinds of things. I think we're also, as a country, overreaching on, if I go down and visit my sister-in-law in San Diego, on the drive back, there's a stop on is it the 5? Where you have to go through border.
Oh, right. That's true.
And it's 80 miles north of the border that you're forced to go through this thing. So what are they checking?
Right.
And I watched as I went through it once, where they looked at me and then looked at my wife, whose skin is not as lily as mine, and gave her kind of a second look. And I'm like, you motherfucker. First of all, why do you have the right to slow my car down right here, right now, at all, right? And again, I get the security idea. Let's protect everybody. But if I can, for the third segment in a row, say that I believe we should live in a utopia where everybody is just nice to each other and we all kind of talk our problems out, that seems like a violation. So my first reaction to this phone thing is, that's mine. You don't get to have me, put my fingerprints on it. I don't understand, honestly, why people don't get a little more worked up about the Fourth Amendment. Like, why the Second Amendment matters so much, or even the First Amendment, and yet the Fourth is like,
afterthought.
Unless we sort of feel like you might be a bad guy, in which case, we're going to do what we want.
We're going to pre-authorize any search.
Yeah. So that's the thing is so that makes me wonder what's up with the specific warrant.
Right. And it almost gets into self-incriminating evidence.
Yeah.
So
it's a little bit Fourth and it's a little bit Fifth. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Because if you get called into not on the witness stand, but on the interrogation room, right? You don't have to say anything.
Sure.
As we've seen played out on countless of CSI, or CBS procedurals. You're not required to incriminate yourself. It's another amendment. So, exactly. So it's a legal gray area because it seems like a grab.
They went ahead and did it.
Right.
So,
Yeah, which, I guess that's how law gets made, right? First,
someone's in violation or does something. And
right, and then we have to fight about it. So I get that. I can get why, if you're law enforcement, you're like, well, we don't want to do San Bernardino over again, so let's just preemptive on that. But preemptive tends to be exactly where we're, violating people's rights. I guess, the only where I can start to see it make sense is when they're pretty darn sure. Right? Like when it's a full-on, we know that this is a vampire's nest that we're running into.
Right.
We've been tracking these guys for, months and months and months. We've made our case to the judge. We've shown super duper reasonable cause that bad shit's going down in this warehouse. Right? And when we get into this warehouse, we think we should be able to gather all the evidence we can, including and especially texts and emails. But I don't know. Even that, if you arrest me and you find drugs on me, why do you have the right to check my phone record, my sort of communications I've had?
Well, maybe right? For your dealer.
Yeah, no, I guess that's the whole point, right? You start with terrorists, and you need to find out more about terrorists, right? That was the San Bernardino case. Is, are they part of a cell? Are they operating by themselves? And I get that there are tons of people in this country who like, nope, let's, whatever you got to do, stop them. Or the sort of like, hey, that's a small price to pay.
Right.
But again, I think I'm overly idealistic about things like that. I don't know. What do you think?
Me?
Yeah.
Or our listeners?
Well, them too.
Me? I mean, I think it's to me, I mean, it's becoming more and more like a phone is, part of a person at this point.
Yeah.
There's so much there from a communication, from a data perspective. It's someone's virtual life and world, and people know that, and you can glean so much from it.
Right.
So,
so what if it goes,
the pre-authorization is disturbing, I think. They're assuming they're basically trying to, green stamp access to it irrespective of what they find.
But this is the thing, right? That's the whole point of a warrant to begin with, is you have to sort of prove that you have a reason to think that you should be able to forcefully go in and gather evidence in a place, right? So the case has to be made, so why shouldn't that include evidence like a phone?
Right.
And this is why I say I think it comes down to the individual warrant. And I think it's going to be tough for a standard to emerge that is fair and makes sense.
Right.
That's my guess. Now, what if let's say I keep my phone super clean and I've got apps that, erase my text history and erase my email history, and I don't use my phone for email and et cetera, et cetera. Do they have the right to go check my Gmail account?
But you know what? I have a workaround.
Okay.
And it's a little comical, okay?
I'm ready.
Now, in reality, when you set up your fingerprint on an iPhone, you don't have to use your finger. What if I used my nose?
Okay.
Right? What if I used my earlobe or some other body part?
Does your earlobe have patterns that are recognizable?
I've never tried it, but I think I might. So then that would negate. That would basically, they basically said, I believe,
they gave the right to depress
a finger. Now they're gonna. I probably just gave them ideas that they're gonna depress anything.
Now it's gonna say or toe,
or nose, or earlobe, or nipple. I think they're gonna have to broaden the terms to almost anything. What if I'm using my dog's nose as my fingerprint? I would wager, and I will try this for the next episode.
Excellent.
Can I add in effectively another fingerprint, but using some other part of my body?
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I mean, that makes everyday practical use a little you have to call over your dog or,
hey.
Unzip your pants in order to get your phone open. Whatever that. I don't know what you're depressing. That's where my brain went.
But you know what? Security over sanity.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how many drugs you're running.
Well, I mean, or how safe you want your information.
Right. This is where I'm like, if I was a bad guy, I would just have a rotary phone on the wall and call people up the old-fashioned way and make them get a wiretap on me, But that's just me. If anybody wants to discuss their criminal intentions with me and other old school mastermind technology that I may have, don't use Twitter because the FBI is going to be watching that shit. You know what? Go run your bad guy stuff alone. I'm going to be
depressing body parts.
Busy depressing body parts. Exactly. But do let us know, folks listening, what's your take on this? Is this an overreach? Do you this is the classic Benjamin Franklin security versus liberty. And where do you land on it? This is definitely kind of one of those areas that's split in the country. And I think we're trending more and more towards, we're going to keep everybody safe at the cost of personal privacy. But we were just talking about HIPAA. We got protections on medical. Are we walking a balance? Let us know what you think. Does your business have a website? Of course it does. Is that website mobile? Maybe. Do you have an app? Aha, we got you.
Well, you should. My App Builder. They have plans ranging from free all the way up to a low $79 a month fee for deploying your business via an app.
Go to goodtalknetwork.com/ads. Click on the banner for My App Builder and join this century's technology, why don't you? You can hear Eric's laughter as we move into segment 4 because he's been attempting to press his iPhone against his earlobe.
Unsuccessful.
Earlobe's not the way to go. It doesn't quite fit the home button. It's hard to stretch it out.
Can't see.
So use your imagination about what else do you need. But that brings us to our segment 4 today. We're going to do some follow-up on some of the stuff we talked about before. Specifically, this ongoing, for a couple episodes now, we've talked about climate change. Last week, we talked about the effort in Rwanda to curb HFCs.
Right.
Well, guess what? There's a development. They did it. They reached an agreement. They made an amendment to the international law passed in Montreal, for the one that curved the hairspray.
Right.
Curbed the hairspray. And now we're doing that for HFCs. So, hooray!
I mean, I think the real key is they went from CFCs to HFCs. Like let's not
sure
settle for the best of the worst,
Yeah.
So we'll see.
So I have mixed reaction to this because the goal going in was to, by the end of the century, reduce the amount of overall global warming that we're going to have by a half a degree. By curbing HFCs, they wanted the estimated reduction to come out to be a half a degree by the end of the century.
Right.
They, based on the agreements they came up with, they think they landed at 0.44
Fail.
degrees, right? So they came up a little short. Of course, John Kerry declared it a monumental success. And in fairness, it's the first time we've kind of done something about it.
Well, I mean, I don't consider signing an accord or an agreement doing something. They
Right.
really have to do what they've set out to do.
Well, I mean, it does include both the sort of expectations internationally and what they're hoping market forces will continue to do. So there's actually an action plan beyond the sort of plan. I guess my point is look, if you're serious about this, put some teeth in it. It literally does nothing to anybody for 3 years.
Ugh. Fail.
Yeah, I mean,
Fail.
3 years from now, it's going to be 100 degrees every day.
Too late. Too little. Too late.
Well, if that bothers you, then there's the fact that China gets classified as China. By the way, the largest producer of HFCs, by I think by a long shot. They are not required to do anything for 13 years, I think it was, or 14 years or something like that.
See, so in reality, this is, I think, useless.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. It's something. Because we don't have anything. Nothing was going to stop HFCs from hockey sticking unless this happened. But, I sure would have liked to have seen it be a little more I mean, of course, I'm not a Chinese air conditioning manufacturer who has, his life riding on it. But honestly, there's a whole lot of people who aren't that. And you would think that they would have that at their best interest. But here's the other thing I want to follow up with. So say what you will about the HFC conference. There was a scientific discovery announced this week where some scientists, the headline in Popular Mechanics is, "Scientists accidentally discover efficient process to turn CO2 into ethanol."
That's interesting.
Holy freaking cow. That's amazeballs useful, right? Because if this can be scaled up in any way, now we're talking atmospheric scrubbers
Right.
that suck the CO2 out.
Create more CO2 to turn into ethanol then.
Yeah, create all the CO2 you want because we're just going to make ethanol out of it. Well, no, and what's great about it is that their process is very efficient and it uses like copper and carbon, so really common materials.
But how big of a scale is it at now?
Well, so this is all in the lab right
Yeah.
now. And the interesting part, where the headline was a little bit off, they say scientists accidentally discover efficient process. They were searching for an efficient process.
Yeah.
The accident was that they were expecting to have to create a like cascading step of chemical reactions that they would need to do. We're going to turn the CO2 into this, and then we're going to turn that into the next thing, and then we're going to turn the... But what happened was they were like, well, step one, turns out we got ethanol. Done. And they dusted off their hands and,
Nice.
and went already to, it was published in the journal Chemistry Select. Recently. Yeah. So, I mean, that at least is promising. The technology involves, according to this article, it involves a new combination of copper and carbon arranged into nanospikes on a silicon surface. So, I mean...
Of course.
Well, why they hadn't tried that before. But what's promising about that is, like, copper, carbon, silicon, like, that's a shovel full of beach dirt. Like,
right.
That's all common stuff. And the fact that they can get carbon dioxide to turn into, a relatively clean burning overall fuel,
Yep.
is very, very promising. So, if the HFC conference didn't go far enough in reversing the scary articles that we've been hearing about, here's hoping that these guys get all kinds of grants right now.
Right.
If I'm the good people at Chevron or Exxon, I'm pumping everything I can into them so that I don't get turned into a dinosaur.
Or they and the coal companies will just work to bury it.
I hope not. I mean, don't you want to be the company that provides the new solution? Don't answer that. All right, that's our updates for this week. If you're considering a career change, consider ostraining.com. They have classes up in all the different platforms you might be interested in, Joomla, Drupal, Angular, etc., etc. Go learn web technology. Go get a new high-paying job. You heard it here. Go to goodtalknetwork.com/ads, click on the OS Training banner, and reinvent your life, why don't you? In our final segment for this week, we're going to take a look at a What's Your Take? This is an article on ScienceAlert.com. It says scientists are close to rewriting the genetic code of life. 62,000 DNA changes later. So the deal here, why this is an article for this week, or excuse me, this was last month that they were working on this. But the recent breakthrough is that they're manipulating DNA down to the level of base pairs. So we've talked a little bit about like genetically modified food in the past,
right?
And
corn,
and the sort of
watermelons.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, but so my point was that breeding has always been a thing, right? Like we've been doing that for centuries. We've always been selectively breeding both plants and animals into things that are more agreeable to us for one reason or another. Like the idea that corn used to look like wheat, and we've slowly made it bigger and juicier, right? Or watermelon, as you say. Like that's in our lifetimes, right? Like as a kid, watermelon always had seeds, and we're near the point where like the little tiny white seeds is all you see anymore, right?
It's
like,
like a donkey fruit.
Well, can you get the kind of watermelons that have black seeds in them? Like if you want to do a watermelon spitting seed contest,
you might need synthetic seeds.
Oh my goodness! Monsanto will re-engineer some seeds for us specifically. Anyway, so genetically modified has kind of a definition that's slowly getting down further and further and further down the levels, right? So we've always kind of bred things, and then we started playing at the level of genes, and now we're getting down to the actual like base pairs. Like
so how are they doing this?
Well, they're messing around with E. coli. Which, right there, first off. Oh, good. You're messing around with E. coli.
In.
No, but when you're doing genetic stuff, right, little viruses and little bacteria, those are the easiest things to mess around with, partly because a virus is practically just genetic material anyway. That's kind of what they are. And their function in life is to get into other things and inject material and have it, so when they do genetic modification, they will use viruses as the carrier because they're already engineered to move genetic code around.
Interesting.
But what's happening that's a little bit different here is that they're going beyond the level of the genes all the way down to the Gattacas, the specific codons inside of the DNA, to the point that they can create amino acids. And
so why'd they start doing this?
Well, because it was there. So I mean the applications theoretically. So for the E. coli, they are getting to where they're pretty sure they can make it resistant to other bugs, whether it be bacteria or other viruses or whatever. Which, that's exactly what we want. We want E. coli that's really resistant, right?
That's not... aim higher.
Well, they are. They see this as like, okay, so there's a little video on New Scientist that went from the E. coli bacteria to a cow. Can we have, farm animals that are more resistant to disease? That's kind of one of the immediate applications. But if you read the quotes from the scientists here, they're like... Yeah, we can pretty much reprogram all of life now. So the exact quote at the beginning of the article says, "It's not easy, but we can engineer life at profound scales, even something as fundamental as the genetic code." This is not a guy who's involved in the scientist, but an MIT bioengineer that they consulted kind of for his point of view. And, technology is reaching the point where you can go in and tweak just about anything. Because you're getting down to fundamental biology, where, in the same way that molecules are made of atoms, which are made of quarks, right? We can say that our DNA is made of, acids that then break down into base pairs, which then break down into these fundamental sets of, two things matched up together. That then, if you remember the high school biology, like the RNA replicates, it like unzips, it turns into RNA, and then that rezips in order to be able to rebuild cells again. So, the scary part of this is that, that there's too much judgment in saying scary. But what it means is we're pretty much at the level where we can go in and mess with things however we want.
Right. You could program a person.
You can program a person. That's the theoretical.
I think they should. I think they should bring back dinosaurs.
Yeah, I mean, all of science fiction is a warning, right?
Right.
Like I feel like the movie Running Man. Like reality TV is like 3 seasons from Running Man at this point. Like
there's been those like adventure type reality shows.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're not running for your life technically yet, but if Trump gets elected, anyway. You take this out to its logical extreme, and you're able to go into a human and decide. And now theoretically, if you're having a child, you can pick the traits.
Naughty.
Well, a lot of people think so. And that's kind of like, okay, well, where's the line, right? If you're picking the traits, are you building the organism from scratch, the human from scratch? Or are you taking the human that you've made, finding something life-threatening and correcting it before the human turns into a human, right? So
Right.
if you go down to the if you've got a disease that's 50% chance going to kill you when you're 40, and you can flip that off by moving 2 codons to the left, right? Because that's
Flip it.
that's exactly. And what set of parents isn't going to want that for their kids? But the same technology, in theory, and this is all getting pretty theoretical. They're starting to be able to do this to E. coli, and we're taking it to extremes here. But in theory, the same thing applies to like blue eyes. I want my kid to have blue eyes,
Right.
so let me just scoot that over there. And while you're here, did you should we correct for body odor? How do you want to go at this? So you could imagine companies sprouting up that have a laundry list of choices that you can make.
Right. Like a vending machine.
Practically, yeah. I'm sure they would be charged by the by the item list. It's an a la carte of what you want to do. And I think different people have different sensibilities about which things are okay and which things aren't okay.
I want to be 8 feet.
Well, I mean, do you want your kid to have an NBA? They get picked first round out of college, and suddenly you don't have to pay for college, right? So your $10,000 investment in gene splicing turns into the $500,000 you save on college, or the $90 million or whatever it costs by then.
Isn't it supposed to be free? Bernie.
Well, again with the politics. So that's kind of the thing we wanted to explore. I don't know. I mean, so we're both dads already. We both have, kids. I don't think we lucked out. Our kids seem normal. So far, so good. But is this something, if you were having another kid today, heaven forfend in my case, no thank you. But if you were, would you want to tinker? Or put it this way, because that's the more scary thing. Would you want to save your child from, let's say, pain?
Right.
Because I think there's a lot of people who react to this like immediately with like, wait, we're playing God. But when it comes right down to it, things change once you're considering.
Yeah,
the
I mean, there's
offspring, right?
2 perspectives. So.
Yeah. So I mean, what do you think? Where's the line? I'm challenging you, Eric.
Yeah. I think both directions, I think, are really the same thing, just a different intention.
Okay. So it doesn't matter. So there's no difference to you between, won't have Parkinson's versus will have blue eyes.
I mean, I think, the outcome, like clearly blue eyes, like people can have any color eyes. They're just selecting a given color.
Yeah.
The other scenario, they're trying to save or prevent something. But in reality, they're using the same means to do it. So I think, if people are against one way, they're really against both.
Oh, see, I tend to disagree. I think one is cosmetic and like blue, because suddenly you're Michael Jacksoning your kid, right? And then you have, potentially racism involved,
right,
and all that good stuff. Whereas the other one is health. You're maximizing life happiness, which is a little different.
Well, what if the kid happens to hate their blue eyes?
Oh, all kids will always hate everything their parents ever did for them or to them. So yes, by all means, I would recommend not telling them. No, but my point is, I think that's where I kind of draw the line, is when you're messing around with anything that is the domain of chance, and I don't mean disease, right? If it's tall versus short, if it's predisposed to broccoli versus ice cream, or whatever those things are, hair color, eye color, skin color, certainly not. But if it's like reasonable life extension by preemptively removing a genetic, essentially a mutation, right? Because diseases are mutations frequently.
It's interesting. I mean, I guess the whole people's fear about GMO foods is that they don't know the true long-term impact. So it's like, okay, you solve for this problem, will that lead to 10 generations out, 10x worse problems?
Yeah,
I don't know.
And that's the thing. I used the word scary earlier, and now I'm going to use it purposely. That's the thing that's a little scary with this kind of tinkering to me is there's no way to study this without doing it.
Right.
And that's why they're doing it on a lower level organism, right? But on some level, you have to kind of just get bigger and bigger and continue to gather evidence and like, well, we're going to flip this over to there, and that's how you get the Andromeda strain.
You can always easily populate Mars
by playing with people's radiation ability.
Yeah, but I was thinking just like creating people.
Oh. So we just 3D print people once you get up there. Why, I mean, which is easier to send? A woman or a replicator programmed with that woman's DNA?
Right.
And, you just clone her a bunch of times and clone a bunch of dudes and let it take... Or maybe you don't let it run its course.
So you've heard it here first.
You just keep 3D printing people.
We've just created the prior art for the human replicator.
Patent TM. Okay, so we've given you plenty to chew on this week. Let us know. What do you think? Give us a call, 323-686-8255. Leave a message with your opinion. We gave you plenty to talk about this week. In particular, this last piece, engineering at the genetic level. Should we, shouldn't we? Where's the line? What's okay and what's not? What's your take? Let us know. Or you can tweet us. I am at Digital Deron, which is spelled Deron for some reason.
And I'm at eFader.
And we would happily participate with chats with you online and also bring that into the show. Let us know what you think. And that's been another week of the Diginauts. Good talk.